This video is brought to you by patreon.com/worsttake. Get access to exclusive live streams and Discord servers, on-screen shoutouts, and early access to some videos when you join now. Help make sure that we can continue to make content like this by supporting the Patreon. Links are in the description down below. Always want to get the perspective of the AFC North in here. And look, for most of the AFC North outside of Pittsburgh, the season's pretty much wrapped up. The Ravens, the locked in the 1 seed, the Browns locked in the 5 seed, and the Bengals have wrapped up not being in the playoffs. So now we're in a situation. Now we're in a situation where, like, hey, our kind of, for the most part, everything that we're going to talk about this season is kind of wrapped up. And you know, if I'm going to talk about the Ravens, I got to bring in Ingraven. And Ingraven, it's been a weird season, I think, for the whole North, because we're this good this year, but like collectively, we've been so injured as a division. Yeah. Like the Browns have had injuries, Joe Burrow and the Bengals going down. Pittsburgh's even had some injuries on the edges. And in Baltimore, people forget, you know, I think people gauge Baltimore's injuries with like, hey, does Lamar play? Because like that's exactly. You boil it down to the most important part. But if you look at the picture outside of Lamar, there's been a ton of injuries this year. And there were a million injuries to start the season for the Baltimore Ravens, right? They kind of got over that patch. Lamar stayed healthy throughout that whole thing. And look, I want to know your perspective on Lamar potentially getting that second MVP. I was talking to Sonny about this. I'm like, once you get that second one, you're a Hall of Famer, especially at the quarterback position, because not many I don't think anybody has 2 MVPs isn't in the Hall of Fame. Kurt Warner, 2 MVPs, Hall of Fame. Dan Marino, 2 MVPs, Hall of Fame. So you get 2. You're a Hall of Famer at that point. But how ridiculous was it this offseason when people were trying to tell you that Trevor Lawrence and Justin Herbert and Josh Allen and Joe Burrow were clearly a different tier of quarterback than Lamar Jackson? I covered the Browns, and I remember being like, well, Lamar Jackson's like, he's up there with Mahomes, Burrow, and if you want to add Allen in there, he's in that tier. And people are like, oh, you're tripping. He's not even there. Justin Herbert's better than him. And it was just, I felt like it was this ridiculous downplaying of everything Lamar has accomplished. And then he's the only guy who gets punished for winning an MVP because people are like, well, he ain't won the MVP since 2019. It's like, yeah, but he won the MVP. And he's been clearly good for the last 4 years since he won that MVP. But people are acting like he just fell off completely off the map. And it's just, do you think the second MVP will finally get people to stop debating Lamar Jackson's legitimacy at the quarterback position? Do you think this is finally going to be the one where people are like, all right, I guess we can't debate it, because it was first, is he a quarterback? He wins the MVP. You can no longer say he needs to switch positions, right? That sounds ridiculous. Like, does the second MVP go from get people off of the, well, he can't throw the ball? Like, does that finally get people off of that? Or do you think people are just going to revert to something else? Like, what's the next thing that people are going to fixate on Lamar Jackson for, in your opinion? Like, what do you think they're going to move to after this?
It's always going to be something. And we see it with Lamar Jackson. It is always something. He, again, to some people, he's not quarterbacky enough. With Lamar Jackson, I think, even if he does, and it's expected that he does get the second MVP, but it's not officially official yet. But if he does get this second MVP, that'll be crazy in itself. But I think a big reason why a lot of people, they won't want to give him the credit for it is because of the numbers, because of the box score. And Lamar Jackson, he does not have the prettiest numbers as a quarterback. Because he only has, I think, 24 passing touchdowns, 7 interceptions. But if you just look at the box score with Lamar Jackson, it doesn't tell you the whole story. That's why it's so important. And this is why I almost feel like I not necessarily would appreciate this MVP even more than the first one, because both of them are definitely appreciated. But if he does get this MVP, I just appreciate the fact that it's showing that football and the people who watch football and vote for the MVP, the way that they look at it has evolved, because they're going past just the numbers. They're going past just the statistics. They're actually looking at, who is really the most valuable player on a team and in the league. When you look at some of the other candidates that were going for MVP, guys like Dak Prescott, who got a lot of pretty numbers and whatnot. It was for a little while, it was Brock Purdy, Christian McCaffrey. Tua was in there in the mix, and Tyreek Hill, of course, he was in there getting almost at 2,000. I don't think he's gonna get it, but we'll see. Unless he just goes crazy this last week. But it was a lot of guys that they were in the runnings for it, and for obvious reasons with the numbers that they were putting up. Now, Lamar Jackson never got a chance to go head to head with a Dak Prescott. They could possibly go there, but we'll see. But when you look at what he did versus those other guys in the games where they played together, so it's like, all right, if somebody's really the MVP, let's really see their value. That's how I look at it, in my opinion. Let's see how valuable they are to their team, especially in a huge game. So win against the 49ers, again, Brock Purdy, Christian McCaffrey, those two are in the MVP runnings as well. And we saw how they performed. Brock Purdy threw 4 interceptions. Now, you're going against a really good defense now with the Baltimore Ravens. So it is what it is. Christian McCaffrey, he had a touchdown and he had a nice little chunk of yards in that game. But even with the stats that he got, we saw how little it impacted the overall game. Now, with Lamar Jackson, he threw for 2 touchdowns in that game, ran for, I want to say, 45 yards against the 49ers, also against a really good defense. But he and his impact on the game, it far exceeded Brock Purdy's and Christian McCaffrey's. And then the following week, it's like, all right, well, that was a huge game against the 49ers. Oh, how do you follow that up against the Miami Dolphins? And another big game against 2 other people who people have been talking about as possible MVP candidates in Tua and Tyreek. More so Tyreek than Tua, but still, because, I mean, somebody's been throwing Tyreek the ball, right? So in that game, we saw Tua. It wasn't pretty with Tyreek. Ravens defense locked them down. Well, not locked them down, but they held it down for him on the most part. But Lamar, he had that 2019 game that he had against the Dolphins where he threw 5 touchdowns. So in the biggest moments, your most valuable players, they got to step up. And that's exactly what Lamar Jackson has been doing against teams with winning records. The only team right now, and I do not remember what the Browns record was in that game. In the last Browns game that we played, because it seems like it almost seemed like we're on a collision course to end up playing the Browns for 3 times this year. And if we do play the Browns again, we will be playing 3 completely different Browns teams this year.
Yeah, that's true. That's wild.
Yeah, first it was DTR, then it was Deshaun Watson, and then it just seemed like everything is just leading up to this. But we'll see what happens. But it just seems like it. The next it could be Joe Flacco, and that would certainly be something right there. But
imagine that being the AFC Championship game.
Oh, that'd be a very emotional game, a fun. Oh, that would be something, man. But hey, we'll see how it goes, because it could happen. But with Lamar Jackson against teams with winning records, he just been handling business. And I don't think Browns had a winning record at that game when they played the Baltimore Ravens yet. I think they were close. But
they haven't had a losing record all year. So I think they were 2-1 when they played Baltimore before the bye week.
No. The last game, the one with
the last game,
Deshaun Watson,
they were. I think they were like 5-3 or something like that.
Oh, okay, my fault. My apologies. But within the biggest games, like against these great teams, well, minus that Browns game, Lamar Jackson has done really well. Like against teams like the Seahawks, against the Lions, against the 49ers, the Dolphins. He's really been stepping it up when it matters the most. So I think that is why the MVP, that's why I really appreciate this year's possible MVP, because it's showing like, all right, they're not just going by the numbers. The numbers got a lot to do with it too now, but they're not just going by the numbers, but they actually watching the film as well.
Yeah, and one of the things that's impressive about this season that I don't think he gets enough credit for is that he's had a career high in passing yards this year. And if the Ravens were in a situation where they needed him to play, you could easily see him getting 4,000 passing yards, and he still leads the team in rushing yards. That is like the amount of offensive pressure that he holds, not only being a 3,500 yard passer, but an 800-yard rusher who you could also see getting to 1,000, but he's the leading rusher. He's the leading passer. I think even how many rushing yards he has like 800. He might be the leading yard getter outside of the quarterback position, right? Because I think Zay Flowers has 830 or something around that.
Oh, as far as yards, yards.
Yeah. So think about that. Like, how many guys can pull that off? Like, even Mike Vick, like most years wasn't pulling that off. It's even Cam's rushing numbers were always like 300 to 500, right? Like it's something spectacular that he's been able to pull off. And you do bring up a point about, maybe this is the year where like we finally evolve as people who vote for these awards, because one of the things that I got so tired of was people giving the excuse within the media who votes for the MVP, right? The people who vote for the MVP would say stuff like, well, they're going to give the MVP to this guy because you know how things go. You know how the voters like to do. And it's like, you are a voter. You have the chance to impact how the voters do, right? Like whenever you hear like these people talk about, oh, well, you know what the voters are going to do. It's like, no, you are a voter, right? Like you have a chance to change what the voters are going to do. It does not have to be a strictly statistical award. We have awards that we give for statistics, right? Passing champion, rushing champion, like those are the statistical awards. You want to give MVP, give it to who you feel like the best players, not who you feel like everybody else going to vote for. Like, what is that? What is that? What is that thought process, right? And I feel like people get so caught up in that they don't evaluate what they have. And it's a similar thing with Myles Garrett, where anybody watching is like, nah, that's the most terrifying player on the defensive side of football this year. Like the Baltimore Ravens, I always give them credit for this. They have never played games with Myles. Like Cincinnati always plays, and like, yeah, we're gonna give them a couple single teams. Baltimore has never not thrown a guard at him. Like they've been like, we're gonna throw 2 at him. We're not gonna worry about this. If people are like, why his sack numbers aren't great against Baltimore, even though they're pretty good, it's like, yeah, because Baltimore has never played those games with Myles Garrett. And then the one year where they didn't have Ronnie Stanley, like you saw what happened when Myles kind of took, like you don't play these games with these guys, like the same way the Browns. Similarly to how the Ravens handle Myles Garrett, the Browns do not play games when it comes to Lamar Jackson. They do not mess around. Like, we are not going to get caught underestimating Lamar Jackson. And I think that's why these two teams, they match up so well, especially when they're both healthy, playing against each other. And I think they're the two most physical teams in the NFL. They're two best defenses in the NFL. And I think this year, the two most well-coached teams in the NFL, if you just look at what these teams have been able to do despite multiple things popping up in the season for them. Nobody else has done that. Like Andy Reid's still trying to figure out this wide receiver situation. That's nothing new to Browns and Raven fans. Like we've had to figure out all these injuries, 4 different quarterbacks, no safeties available. Both of us were at a point where we had none of our starting safeties. We had none of them. Browns are still at that point. So it's been this interesting year where it seems like it feels like these are, in my opinion, the two best football teams in the AFC are in Cleveland and in Baltimore. And it's going to be interesting to see how they match up in the playoffs, because things have changed for Baltimore and for Cleveland. And it's been fascinating to watch these two teams constantly have to evolve throughout the year, because Lamar has done a great job with it. I always felt like, and you can go back look at my video interviews with Engraven back a couple years ago, I've always felt like Lamar was being held back as a passer in that Greg Roman system. And
Yeah, for
now
sure.
to see him step out of that and become like, sometimes it looks Pat Mahomes like with him. What have you enjoyed the most about this evolution of Lamar Jackson?
Man.
Like, if you had to explain it to somebody who hasn't been watching, like what the difference is from last year or the years in the Greg Roman system to now when he's in a true passing system, what would you explain it as?
Greg Roman, under Greg Roman, he got the most out of Lamar Jackson as a runner. But Todd Monken is getting the most out of Lamar Jackson as a passer. And it's been a bittersweet thing because under Greg Roman, we saw it. We saw the potential. We saw what Lamar Jackson could do, but we felt like he could do more. We felt like that offense had peaked. We felt like it had reached its maximum heights, the highest it could possibly go. And like it was like, all right. And I remember even after 2019, after that wonderful season, I remember saying, all right, what's next? What's next? Not that he had to get another MVP right after that or whatnot, but how was the offense going to evolve? And it just seems like it never really did. We had heard Greg Roman with different quotes and comments like, oh, I got plays in the vault. Oh, this offense, we're going to forge a new identity. But we had just really never seen any of it come to fruition. But with Todd Monken, with this new offense, which has been really nice and very surprising in some ways. And we just seen the growth of it throughout the year. I remember early on this year, I remember just being frustrated because Todd Monken, they would call a screen. They'll call a screen like Zay Flowers. And then within the next two plays, they would call another screen, whether it was Zay Flowers again or something else, but it would just be so obvious. It's like, man, this guy gets so screen happy. But that was early on in the year. They definitely went away from that. And we starting to see rub routes. That's something that the Baltimore Ravens never did before. And just the execution and the flow, just them spreading the field out a lot more. Now we know with Mark Andrews. Mark Andrews is Lamar Jackson's favorite target. He could trust him in all situations. He would give him the opportunity in any situation. If Lamar is in doubt, he could look for Mark Andrews. You know what? He got 1, 2, 3, 4 people on him. I'm going to give him a shot because I trust Mark Andrews. But we saw even before Mark Andrews unfortunately went down, we saw that this offense, it was not Mark Andrews or bust. I want to say it was either a Browns or a Bengals player years back when Hollywood was still on the team and Mark Andrews was still on the team. I think it might have been a Bengals player though, but they said, all right, just watch 15 before Hollywood changed his number to 5 and watch 89 and we'll be straight. That's all we got to worry about. Because it was true. That was the Baltimore Ravens passing game. It was Mark Andrews and Hollywood Brown. But now we see, like, again, before Mark Andrews even went down, this offense, they spread the ball around to so many different people. So you can say, for instance, we're gonna take OBJ out the game. Okay, still got Zay Flowers, Nelson Agholor, Mark Andrews back then, Isaiah Likely now, who has just come on so strong in Mark Andrews' absence. So Ravens got so many different ways that they can get it. It's not limited to just a couple of guys, and that has really alleviated so much pressure off of Lamar Jackson. And that's something that we as fans have been asking for years, to where Lamar Jackson ain't got to play hero ball. He ain't got to be Superman all the time. But where it can be distributed to a lot of other guys. So this offense has really just allowed him to grow as not just a passer, but as a quarterback. It's allowed him to take that next step in his continued development. And it's really been able to pull Lamar Jackson out from where he was at before. Because, again, he was at the top. Like with Greg Roman's offense, Lamar Jackson was right here. He was right here trying to break through. But the offense, no. You stay where you at. But this offense is like Todd Monken reaching his hand down in there and saying, all right, Lamar, come with me. Come with me. I got you. I'm going to take you to new heights. And it's been a beautiful thing to see. Another thing that I really appreciated about this offense is the opportunities and the chances that they take. Before, in years past, and I mean, some people even say it this year, but I feel like it gets over-exaggerated. But before, people will say, oh, Lamar Jackson, he's very inaccurate with the deep ball. He's inaccurate with the deep ball, even though we know with the deep ball, it's a very low percentage throw. But hey, like we us Ravens fan, we've been getting flashbacks because Joe Flacco, that boy, he will throw that deep ball, he will take his shots. But anyway, back to Lamar
He's like,
Jackson.
he sees Amari Cooper. He's like, oh, it's Anquan Bolden that can go downfield. Oh, I'm throwing that. Like, he be looking at David and Joker. He's like, that's Dennis Pitta with speed. Yeah, I know what to do with you.
Like, yeah, Flacco been giving them their chances. He will take them shots, and that's always been Flacco all day. I remember when we had it was Mark Trestman as offensive coordinator. I remember Flacco being frustrated and even calling him out after a game against the Raiders where they weren't taking many shots downfield. And Flacco was like, no, I want to take shots downfield because that's his game. But anyway, with Lamar Jackson, people would say, oh, Lamar Jackson, he's inaccurate with the deep ball. But in years past, what the Baltimore Ravens would do, which would be so frustrating, they would limit the opportunities because, say, for instance, they take a downfield shot and it's incomplete for whatever reason, whether it's an overthrow, whether it's a miss, whether it's a drop, whatever it is, they wouldn't go back to it. They'd be like, all right, we're done. No more deep throws for the rest of the game. That's it. But now in this offense, they take a deep shot. Say, for instance, they miss for whatever reason, whether it's an overthrow, underthrow, somebody drops it, they go back to it again. And I love that because that makes such a big difference. Another thing, too, with this offense, and I think especially with Mark Andrews going down, it's really allowed Lamar Jackson to do this, is really build even more trust with his pass catches. Because before we had seen where Lamar might throw somebody a pass, and if they drop it, then he may not look their way for a while again after that. But this year, he throws somebody a pass. Like it's happened a lot of times with Rashad Bateman. He throws Rashad Bateman a pass, and if Rashad Bateman drops it, then he'll end up going right back to him again. And Rashad Bateman, he'll end up making up for it. So it's really allowed him to continue to build even more trust with all of his wide receivers, thus opening up this offense that much more.
By the way, a wide receiver, here's how you can tell if a wide receiver truly messed up. That reception after they mess up, right? If they celebrate that reception, right? When they after they mess up and they celebrate it like a touchdown, but it's like an 8-yard gain. Yeah.
That's a good point, man.
Yeah. I didn't think like you can always tell every time a receiver run a wrong route and in the ball, and you see a quarterback, why weren't you here? This and that. And then like 3 plays later, they run a crossing route, they get 8 yards. It's like, oh, okay. That's that true, man atoned for a mistake. That's what happened right there. You can always tell. Like wide receivers and defensive backs, you don't ever got to guess what they feeling. They will tell you how they feeling because defensive backs have a similar type thing to where if they blow a coverage and then they get a PBU, yes, yes, you gonna hear about that. Like they gonna celebrate that one a little tougher because they knew they wasn't supposed to get it. or they get out of coverage and then the ball gets thrown over their head. No fly, seatbelt. I had nothing to do with that because you got away with what? Like, hey, the celebrations will tell you when somebody messes up. Like, that's what we need to do in film when we try to figure out who ran the wrong route. Like, nah, just look at the film. Like, let's see his next reception. Okay, he celebrated a 5-yard gain. Yeah, he messed up that route before. He messed up his last target. He admitted it.
I'm gonna look out for that, man. That's a real good point.
Yeah, but it's interesting too because like we talk about everything that Lamar's been able to add as a passer. His rushing numbers haven't really dipped. Like he's still a very effective runner. Doesn't run as much. Well, not really. Like he ran 147 in his rookie year. He's at 148 this year, 133. So I guess in a full season, it's about as low as he's been since his rookie year. And he didn't play a full season his rookie year. So yeah, it's a little bit less. He's running less, but he still is able to get 800 yards, still very effective as a runner. Yeah. And I think I feel like for me, the age well concerns are going to be kind of like out the book for me. Like I don't really care about them, but I know fans are. But let's talk about this Ravens defense because I think the Browns and the Ravens have the 2 best defenses in the NFL. And it's interesting because the makeup of the Ravens defense is very much of there's not, like, if you count Roquan Smith as a superstar, that might be the only one that you really have there, right? Like, it's a bunch of, like, really good players. Where it's like, okay, Justin Madubuike, Pat Queen. I think Kyle Hamilton will be a superstar in a couple years once everybody catches wind of how good he's been. But I don't think everybody's caught up to that. Marlon Humphrey, he's he's a really good player, but like I don't know if he's at like he can be a superstar. I think somebody could consider him a superstar. But then you look at the Browns defense and it's like, okay, I know why they're good. There's Denzel Ward. There's Myles Garrett. There's all these guys that I heard about in the draft. Oh, here's Grant Delpit playing really well, right? Like they have a lot of names that you remember. Either they built them up in college or whatever, where the Ravens are a little bit of a kind of more of an underground crew, but they're both really good. And you know who I want to talk about? My boy, Justin Madubuike. Hey, the Ravens are very fortunate, in my opinion, because he has had the quietest, like 13 and a half sack season really I've ever seen in my life. And I'm like, is somebody not going to pay him this offseason? Like, are the Ravens going to get away with offering this man $13 million over like a 2-year pay? Like, are they going to get a discount on a defensive tackle that had 13? Because it's like nobody. I was looking at the Pro Bowl rankings. He's only like 6 in the Pro Bowl vote right now. And I'm like, this is nuts. This is nuts, man. What Justin Madubuike has been willing to do. And do you see this as, okay, well, is he taking advantage of some opportunities that are available to him because attention's going elsewhere? Do you think it's a creation of the TJ McDonald scheme? Or do you think Justin Madubuike is truly blossoming into a Cam Hayward type defensive lineman?
I think it's a mix of everything. Because one, the context is super, super important because remember in years past, Justin Madubuike, he wasn't a starter. Because I know there've been a lot of people that say, oh man, Justin Madubuike, he not even all that. He just taking advantage because it's contract year. And when people say that, they like, oh, he's just stepping up because it's contract year. I'm thinking like, yeah, it wouldn't you step up if you know you're getting ready to get the biggest raise of your life? Like I always hate when people
like everybody don't perk up at work when the boss come in. Like if you work at Wendy's and your GM is in the building for your shift. Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, you're being much better with your customer service. Like yeah, it's just what it is. Like hey, money time's up. You get the and I think it was like I think people are being disingenuous when they say that about Madubuike because it's not just that it was a contract year. Like, yeah, it's a contract year, sure. He also finally got the opportunity, right? He'd been like kind of in his rotation behind Calais Campbell, and some older guys in there. Like, and now he finally has the opportunity to step up and really be the man at 3T. And now you're seeing what he could do. Like, I think, and he had flashes of being this player before he took over that role. And I think the Ravens saw it coming because it was not a non-controversial move to not bring back Calais Campbell, right? Like that was something that kind of like surprised some people when they're like, nah, we're going to let Calais Campbell walk and let him go to Atlanta this year. You know, we kind of celebrated that outside the North. And then now, you know, Justin Madubuike slipped right in there. Guess they knew what they were doing there in Baltimore.
Exactly. And on top of that, something that we just found out like maybe a little less than a month ago, they had actually tried to sign Justin Madubuike this past offseason. They tried to sign him to a contract extension, but he taking the Lamar route, betting on himself, and it's obviously paid off dividends because he is going to be a very, very, very rich man. Hopefully, it'll be from the Baltimore Ravens. But
Amada to the banky. Yes,
yeah, he's getting it, man. So it's definitely worked out for him for sure. But yeah, I just really think the biggest thing, something that you just talked about, has just been the opportunity because he had before in previous years he had continued to sit behind guys, and we saw flashes, and we had always heard like people, you know, especially off-season time, we hear all these stories. Oh yeah, this player is working out with that player, and with him it was Justin Madubuike, he works out with Aaron Donald. Like, oh, well, he works out with Aaron Donald. Okay, he learning from the best. Okay, all right, let's see it then. And again, we would see the little flashes in here, but he wouldn't get that many opportunities because he was behind so many guys. But now he's a starter. He's out there and he's finishing. I love with Justin Madubuike how he is a finisher from the inside of the defensive line. Because pressures are one thing. Pressures are nice, but sacks are another thing because sacks show you close the deal. Now with Jadeveon Clowney, he's been doing really good this year. But the thing, I'm not sure if this happened with him in Cleveland, but with Jadeveon Clowney, he's nice. He will get that pressure all day, but with the sacks, he'll be right there, but he'll just miss the quarterback.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That has happened. so much this year.
Oh yeah, look. There's two levels of Jadeveon Clowney. There's him barely missing the quarterback, but like it's still being effective enough to cause a sack. And then there's the version of Jadeveon Clowney where he just fly around a quarterback and you swore it was a DB because that could not have been a linebacker that fell off of that quarterback like that. It won't even be somebody big. It'd be like Mason Rudolph or somebody. He's like, what happened there, dog? Like,
no, yeah, that's real.
Jadeveon Clowney. I don't know what it is about him. But like he has, like his tackle rating is just not great. Like he can get in position, he can force a run to go the opposite direction and really be a monster in that run game. He can force quarterbacks to flush, but he ain't gonna get that sack. Like he just not gonna get it. And I think that's what frustrated him about playing opposite of Myles Garrett, because when Myles Garrett is there and you miss a sack, guess who's taking that sack? Myles Garrett is taking that sack, dog. He's already there. So you don't even get the chance to try to like trip him or nothing. Myles is already there like, nah, that's mine. I think that's what frustrated him, was like, Myles keep taking my sacks.
Yeah, I mean, that could have been. But yeah, he definitely, the pressure's there, but a lot of times he just missed the sack. But something that you mentioned, as far as just the Ravens' overall defense, they get it from a lot of different places. Obviously, Roquan Smith being the leader of the team. I know you're the biggest Roquan Smith fan. And then
What you mean? I think Roquan Smith is a fine player. I just don't like when they compare him to Ray Lewis. I'm like, all right, we don't need to go there with Ray. You know, we don't need to compare him to Ray. He not Ray. But he's a very serviceable player. He's a good hand to have there. You know, a solid linebacker. Reminds me a lot of Anthony Walker. I'll just.
I think with the comparisons to Ray Lewis, I think it's just really the leadership, especially now that the veteran leadership, him stepping up now. I said this on my stream the other day. I do feel like Fred Warner is the better linebacker than Roquan Smith overall, because I just feel like Fred Warner, he makes more plays than a Roquan Smith. But Roquan Smith is nice though, but with him, just having him there, Matabike, we're just talking about Kyle Hamilton, who in this second year, like it has been crazy to watch his continued growth and development, and just the way that he impacts the game continuously. Like last year, I remember when he was first out there, it just seemed like he was a little bit lost. And he was a rookie. Even though he was a 14 overall pick, he was still a rookie. That was his first year in the defense. But even last year, as the year went along, he just looked better and better and better. But I was scared. So I've been very appreciative of the Ravens and their coaching staff and Mike McDonald, their defensive coordinator this year, because last year they used Kyle Hamilton not as a traditional safety. They used him as just a weapon. He was a safety. He was a slot corner. He was a pass rusher. He was doing all this different stuff. But I was scared because they traded Chuck Clark to the Jets this past offseason. So I was like, oh man, they're going to put Kyle Hamilton in a more traditional safety role. He's going to be really having that Chuck Clark role. But they haven't done well. While Chuck Clark did do a lot of things, this Kyle Hamilton, he just does them better. And that's not a shot at Chuck Clark at all, but I just think with Kyle Hamilton, just his ability, his range, just everything he can do, he's such a great player, man. And I did not realize that he was going to be this great and this consistently impactful. You mentioned Marlon Humphrey. Yeah, Marlon Humphrey, he's a good corner. He has his lapses here and there, but he's an overall good corner. I think he really struggles with those small, twitchy wide receivers. And then sometimes he can struggle with the deep ball, with defending the deep ball. But yeah, it's been just a contribution from everybody. Like we lost Tyus Bowser, we lost David Ajabo, but Odafe Oweh, he's been solid, been a little quiet over these past month. But Jadeveon Clowney's been doing his thing. Kyle Vanoy, who we signed in, I want to say week 4. Kyle Vanoy, he has been killing it. And from him, I was wondering, I know he's a do-it-all linebacker, but how good of a pass rusher will he be? I guess we'll see. Hope for the best. And he has been just amazing for the Baltimore Ravens, been a big contributor for them. Michael Pierce, who a lot of times this past offseason, I had forgotten that he was there because he missed the majority of
I
last season.
I've been watching him this year. Like, did he get cut? Like, because you didn't remember. Like, he had been. I don't know if he had been not impactful, but he just hasn't been who you remember him being for a couple years. And you watch him this year, like, nah, he's back.
Yeah.
Because he had that one tackle in this Miami game where he just completely washed. Was it poor Raheem Mostert that ran
a chain.
Yeah, it was David Achane. Yeah, David Achane. I was watching that with my girl, and I was like, "See, this is why people don't play football for long because this is what you're expected to do. This is what you're expected. Like you supposed to. You David Achane. You 5'9", 190, and you got run your full 4.3 into that moving wall, and that moving wall is giant. Like that is a giant man.
Yeah, it really is. So just and it is other guys too. Ronald Darby, Arthur Millette been up and down. But the point, Geno Stone, who has just he been doing this thing. And Marcus Williams, he been up and down too. I know he been hurt. But anyway, the point they've been
was it Stevens too, the corner?
Oh my goodness, I'm tripping. I ain't tripping. Yes, Brandon Stevens. He. With Chuck Clark, I used to say this about Chuck Clark, because Chuck Clark was not a bad safety. He wasn't a great one, but he was not a bad safety. But his biggest issue is that he would be around the ball. He'd be around the play, but he just could never finish or close the play out. Like he would be in good position, but the tight end, receiver, whoever, they would always make the play over him or around him. And Brandon Stevens, that was his thing for the past couple of years. He would always be around the ball, always be around the play, be in right position, but he just would not make the play. So going into this year, I was like, all right, we still got Brandon Stevens. All right, cool, whatever. All right, well, hopefully Rocky Sin will do his thing. Hopefully Ronald Darby will do his thing. I didn't have high hopes or expectations for Brandon Stevens, but he has exceeded all of them by far. This man has such an amazing year. And it's just been a huge, pleasant surprise because he's taken that next step. And I'm sure you know that there's people that, I know Anthony Averett for the Ravens, he was another one, unfortunately, where always got the speed, not the biggest size or whatever, but close by the ball, always around the ball, but not making plays on the ball. And he never quite took that jump. And you know, we're players where they can get stuck there, and that can almost like limit their careers to where they'll be there. They'll just be stuck in that spot where they just never get over that hump. But Brandon Stevens this year, he's gotten over that hump. And that's been really nice to see. Even in games where Marlon Humphrey has missed, been out, the fact that we've had Brandon Stevens minus this Miami Dolphins game because he didn't play in that game due to injury, but we've been able to rely on Brandon Stevens for the most part. Of course, like any cornerback, he does give up some plays here and there, but overall, he has had just an amazing season.
Yes. And I think that's a good note to end it on. Always good to get some background on the Baltimore Ravens because, look, it looks like that's who's going to be left up in this competition in the playoffs is the Baltimore Ravens, the Cleveland Browns. We'll see if it felt like it was destined to happen in 2022 though, right? Like we had that great Monday Night Football game. The Browns that got swept by the Ravens. We was just like, man, if we get them one more time, they're not going to beat us 3. And I felt like Raven fans understood too, they wasn't going to beat us 3 times in a row. So, it was something, but I feel like both of these teams are so much better. And I think the one note I want to end this on is the thing that I think separates the Browns and the Ravens from every other team in the AFC is these are two teams that took care of business. Like when business was there to be taken care of. The Browns beat the Texans, they beat the Jaguars, they beat the entire AFC South, and then they beat who they had to beat? The Jets, right? And they got their extra bye week, and they got the extra 17 days, and they did it on a Thursday night, which means you get the extra 3 days plus.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
So you get all that extra rest to get healthy. You took care of business. You reaped your reward. Baltimore Ravens, everybody in Cleveland was like, hey, watch out for that 2-game stretch. The San Francisco 49ers and the Miami Dolphins. Hey, the Ravens lose those 2. All we got to do is take care of business. We could be in first place.
And that's crazy to think about, man. That the Browns, they actually really did have a chance to have because 4 quarterbacks, like losing 1 quarterback, that's enough. Especially, I mean, the investment that got put into Deshaun Watson. Like I know people people are so
and Nick
upset.
Chubb.
Oh, it's true.
And Nick Chubb
about that.
and Jack Conklin and Jedrick Wills, our left tackle. Yeah, they have been destroyed by these injuries this year, but they have still found a way to power through. And when it's PJ, then you switch back to Deshaun, then you have to go to DTR, then you go from DTR to Joe Flacco, and you just figure it out week in, week out. And that's why I think Kev should be the coach of the year. But it feels like these are two teams that take care of their business. Like even in 2020, the Browns had the opportunity to take care of business. They didn't take care of it, right? Against the Jets. They lost. They had to win against the Steelers to sneak in. I think you can separate the good teams from the bad teams from the ones that take care of business. Miami Dolphins, every time they're in position to take care of some business, what happens? Right? Like they don't take care of it. Buffalo, they're taking care of business, right? Like, okay, that's a team to watch out for. The Jacksonville Jaguars. I mean, dog, they just had to win one game.
It's been crazy for them.
One game, and they lost almost all. If they just beat the Buccaneers, they're not in this conundrum that they're in right now, but they don't take care of business. They're not that good of a team. And you see what happens, right? Yeah. The good teams take care of business. No excuses. Just take care of business. The bad teams, when business comes on their hand, when business is on their plate, they don't take care of it. Hey, Philadelphia Eagles. You gotta look at them too, right? Business right in front of them. Loses to the Arizona Cardinals. I'm like, well, that's a team that looks like they might get past the first round because they're gonna have to play the Buccaneers. They'll beat them. But once they get to the second round, hey man, it might be like on some 1-2-3 Cancun. They don't look like they like each other at all on an Eagles team, right?
There's something going on there.
And I think that's why people are looking at the Chiefs funny, because the Chiefs usually, making jokes about who we don't got on the roster anymore. We gonna take care of business. And then, they kind of didn't take care of business for like 3 weeks in a row. It's like, okay, what's going on with them? So it's an interesting landscape in the AFC. It's wild that we're talking about the Browns and the Ravens, given all the injuries that both of these teams have sustained throughout the year, being the top two teams in here. And also, ain't it kind of a surreal thing to get used to when I say future Hall of Famer Lamar Jackson if he wins that second MVP? Like, that's wild, right? It feels like it just started.
Yeah, right? That would be something, man. We're gonna see. That really would be something. Cause like you mentioned, the guys that got two, and Peyton Manning, Aaron Rodgers will be in the Hall of Fame. Yeah.
Even without a ring, you get in with two. What? Because Kurt Warner got in with two. He don't got a ring. I don't believe he has a ring, right? No, he won one with.
No, greatest show on turf.
Yeah, he won with. I got him confused with Tennessee, but two get you in. Two get you in. There's not many people who've won that. Well, in the NFL, there are people who've won it once, and it's been kind of fluky because, like, Brian Sight won the MVP in 1970, or one year they gave it to the kicker. But you get two in the NFL at the quarterback position. That's Hall of Fame worthy. But we also overestimate how many years it takes to get into the Hall of Fame. Like, it usually takes like 2-3 hot seasons to get into the Hall of Fame. It's just really hard to achieve that. But think about that. It's something to think about. But thank you for coming on the Grave and giving us some insight on the Baltimore Ravens that we will use against you if we meet again. But we've been dreaming of this AFC Championship or just playoff game versus the Baltimore Ravens for since I've started doing this. It's feel like every time I come on here, we've been like, hey man, it's gonna happen. This gonna be the year. We gonna finally play each other in the playoffs. So hopefully that day comes for the Cleveland Browns and the Baltimore Ravens. Hopefully in the AFC Championship. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not trying to play y'all and Pat. Okay, hey, one or the other. I'm not playing Lamar and Pat, dog. I would rather play Tua and Lamar or Tua and Pat. I'm not doing both. Okay, I'm not doing that. That's not happening. But one or the other, I'm fine with. The Browns have a great defense. I don't know if they can live through that, but. Yeah, we'll see what happens. Hopefully we finally get our game. Hopefully we finally get our day. We get to do a playoff preview like we've always wanted to. But until then, want to thank you, Grave, for coming on here. Sure. Y'all have a great day. Have you a better night. Peace.